Hi, welcome to the What's Right show. Sam Mirejovsky here behind the What's Right microphone. Friends, hope everybody back in Vegas is doing okay. I am looking at these pictures here from my trip as I am in the Czech Republic in Prague. And I certainly have heard from many friends that have been affected by this. Apparently, some very, very strong winds. If you haven't been following this and do not live in Las Vegas and are maybe not at home, strong winds, big dust storm came through and has done wreaked some havoc. Looking at these photos here of these downed power lines, absolutely horrific. So be safe out there, please, and hopefully each and every one of you and your families are safe and sound. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840 KXNT. At What's Right Sam on X, formerly known as Twitter. And of course, you can email me anytime, sam@whatsrightshow.com. Now, I cannot tell you, by the way, looking at the news today, it is just endless Trump winning. And then we've got the Diddy trial. I'm going to talk about that here in a minute because I just like to point out that in spite of my take on what might possibly go down with Diddy being very unpopular in the movement, it proved to be correct. So we'll get to that. But the Trump wins. I mean, where do I begin? The big, beautiful bill working its way through Congress. Of course, then also Alligator Alcatraz. The visit yesterday continues to pay dividends. People are talking about it. Robbie, people are talking about it here. I had a court hearing on a matter here that I'm dealing with, and then spent about maybe 5 hours or so with my attorneys here in Prague. And I was, let me tell you, everybody's talking about it, and people are, they think it's funny. Well, Joy Reid thinks it's a concentration camp, right? And I've seen the pictures. There's some people libs are so upset about the Alligator Alcatraz that they are taking photos from inside the prison. Remember, these are chain link walls. It was thrown together in about 2 weeks' time. Chain link walls for these cells, and there's bunks. The bunks look like they maybe go 3 high. It's meant to house people for a short period of time. Remember, this is what the Democrats wanted. They wanted due process. So due process requires that the arrested illegal immigrants be housed somewhere while their case is reviewed by a magistrate. Yesterday, I mentioned that the idea there in Florida is to have, in Florida, the National Guard, members of it who qualified to be deputized as federal immigration magistrates to review these orders, these deportation orders, put the stamp on it, sign off on it, and hasta la vista, there you go. But people are taking the pictures of this Alcatraz, Alligator Alcatraz, detention facility, as it's being called, and likening it to Auschwitz. It's all the left has. Trump is in the midst of dismantling the greatest motor voter initiative ever undertaken by the Democratic Party in real time, and all they have are the same tried and true and worthless, might I add, insults that the Democrats have, calling Republicans Nazis. You know that when this is all they've got, they don't have much. I reflect on this immigration thing. Robbie, I was pissed about illegal immigration before Trump was elected. I was pissed about it all throughout the Biden administration. I saw the pictures and the stories of crossings, and the border and parts of the border in real time be overrun. So many people crossing at once that the handful of Border Patrol agents who were in place, who perhaps could have done something to stop it, were completely overwhelmed and outnumbered. I remember thinking in the midst of all this, I go, this is bad. But I think, folks, we don't realize how bad it actually was. Because however bad it seemed, really underneath the surface, it was that much worse. Now, rich liberals living behind gated walls, communities, safe from, or safer from, I should say, organized crime, petty crime even, were much more defensive of, it turns out, of illegal mass migration because they weren't affected the way lower income Americans were. Because in cities that had entry-level or parts of cities that had entry-level housing, communities where rents were at once upon a time affordable, that's where these mass migrants would land. And this is what explains why both lower income individuals and Hispanics generally were far more favorable to Trump's agenda than ever before. One of the key indicators of a possible, perhaps likely, Trump success in November came from looking at the numbers, looking at what polling was for Hispanic Americans, Democrats, Republicans, and the like. People were sick of it because I think it turns out that instead of the number being, let's say, 14 million or so, 10 million, different numbers were thrown out. The number was closer to 25 or 30 million just in the 4 years that Joe Biden flung the border wide open. Now, what of this? If that number is true, it's very likely that the total number of illegal immigrants in the U.S. at the time that Trump came to office was somewhere in the range of 50 to 60, maybe as high as 70 and 80 million people. This is astonishing. And their absence, to the extent that a great deal of them may very well end up being deported, will end up perhaps self-deporting under the fear of a pending expulsion, is going to have an effect. Now, first off, it'll have an effect politically, and I know people have minimized this, but Trump pushing this idea of the census being retaken to exclude illegal immigrants is so important. And I mentioned this yesterday, but it's so important because it takes away from the Democrats one of the key incentives to bring illegals into the country. When the Supreme Court said, yup, you do count illegal immigrants in the census, we don't care how they got here, but they're here and they deserve representation. When they made that decision, that was the turning point, and the Democrats took it as a green light. As soon as the Democratic Party got back into office, presto, the gates were flung open and the welcome mat was laid out. Biden did this deliberately. He said, come. Unlike his famous one-word answer when pressed about what he would tell Iran or Russia, the Ayatollahs or Putin, when Biden said his one-word answer to Putin would be don't, he said the exact opposite to a 25 million strong army of invaders into this country. It's really astonishing when you stop and think about it. The other thing that I think about frequently is, will any of the people that actually made it happen, that did this, that participated in this invasion of America, will they be held to account? And this was a question asked at a press conference while Trump was down there in Ochopee. Ochopee, Florida is, by the way, where the Alligator Alcatraz prison was built. It is deep in red America, not just in a red state, but in the reddest of areas. Very, very pro-Trump there. But basically, I think if one of these migrants were to escape the facility and get past the snakes and the gators, then they'd have to hit the final last line of defense, Robbie, which would be the rednecks. Don't think that would go well either. So, well, look, here's my point about the prison, though. If people are talking about it here in the Czech Republic, where I am, if people are in Europe, in the heart of Europe, they're talking about it and laughing about it, which I had, people come up to me and ask me about it, then the word is out. Can you imagine if you are thinking right now about possibly coming illegally into the U.S. and you're facing a border that, by the way, is militarized, where you have the military operating in parts of it, where you have the word is out, right? You will be captured and expelled. But better yet, you'll be captured, and perhaps, if things go really well, you will be taken into custody and will be given an opportunity to challenge your detention, which is everything that the Democrats want, right? Read due process. But to challenge your detention, you're going to be sent to a hellhole swamp prison where you get to spend a week or two before you're, shipped back. I don't know about you, but that is an enormous disincentive to any person considering taking the risk. And then to boot, the same fate awaits people who still have not self-deported, who still remain in America, who still, knowing full well they have no legal claim to be in the U.S., remain in the country. Another powerful, disincentive to continue breaking the law. So I don't know. This is all crazy stuff. So I'm going to get to the press conference because there are some absolute gems in it. And I didn't get to all of this yesterday, and it's just that good. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840, KXNT. The What's Right show is brought to you by Sam and Ash Injury Law. In a crash, call Sam and Ash 702-820-1234 because you deserve what's right.
I'm the best.
Personal injury law has been the same for a long time.
The best.
Big egos, greed, and sleazy schemes. We've had enough. Welcome to Sam and Ash, the new standard for personal injury law, where things are done the right way, because you deserve a team that delivers real support and results. When you have both, your whole world can change. Sam and Ash Injury Law, because you deserve what's right.
Greetings and welcome back. Sam Mirejovsky here, News Talk 840 KXNT. So Trump yesterday flies down to Ochopee, Florida. That's how you pronounce it. Ochopee. Yes, Florida names, all the Indian names. It's difficult sometimes. So Ochopee is where they're building the Florida Alcatraz, Gator, what are they calling? Alligator Alcatraz, right? It's just an ICE detention facility. It's nice, it's new, it's clean, it's got chain link fences. It's not meant to house people for a long time. So, I don't know. What can I tell you? It's not the usual club fed that the libs like to put out there. Anyway, so here's I told you that they're calling Trump a Nazi for this. And here's Joy Reid. I mean, this is so good. Here is what they're calling this facility.
I had to forget about him, but Ron DeSantis is still governor of Florida. He took the Comfy Couch hosts on a tour of the concentration camp that he's building in Florida in order to round up brown people, and throw them in a camp because he doesn't want them in Florida.
Now, okay, we are, I guess, Ron DeSantis, Trump, everybody here is rounding up brown people and throwing them into concentration camps, per Joy Reid. I don't know. Are we discriminating against only dark-skinned illegal immigrants, Robbie? Because every once in a while I see in the news that there is a very fair-skinned person who is from a European country that is either getting deported or being denied entry. And we're told it's because I don't remember the guy, for example, that showed up from Europe and he had supposedly he got sent back because he had a meme of JD Vance. And it turned out that it was a whole other thing that they found that he had a conviction, a criminal conviction, and on that basis denied him entry into the US, made it all about the meme. But anyway, my point is, right? There are other people that are getting deported. It's about your status. But Joy Reid makes it about race because this is all they've got. So at the press conference right now, you had DeSantis down there. The two of them were absolutely thick as thieves. By the way, Trump says, I told you yesterday how friendly they were. Here's an example of it. Trump talking about DeSantis during the presser, how they, have definitely mended their fences, probably will not resume any significant hostilities.
It's been just a beautiful, beautiful partnership. So, Ron, I'd like to thank you personally. You are my friend, and you'll always be my friend. And we may have some skirmishes even in the future. I doubt it, but I will always come back because we just we have blood that seems to match pretty well. We have a relationship that's been a very strong one for a long period of time, and I appreciate it, very much appreciate it.
So there it is. All right. Now, a reporter after the press conference doing the Q&A, a reporter asked specifically about Alejandro Mayorkas. And he basically flat out asked, this reporter goes, why has not Mayorkas been arrested yet? Because as I mentioned just in the last segment, if you're talking about 20, 25, maybe 30 million people that were allowed to flood into the country under Joe Biden, and basically under, clearly in opposition to, or against existing federal law, and you have Mayorkas, who is the head of the department in the U.S. charged with protecting the country. I mean, he was the Secretary of, Homeland Security. Shouldn't he be held responsible? Here's the question, and of course, Trump's answer.
Why hasn't he been arrested yet? Obviously, you guys are cleaning up the mess that was made deliberately for the past 4 years, and so people want accountability. It's great to see that the border is secured, and it's great to see the state level cooperation. But I guess I would ask you, why hasn't he been held accountable, or anybody really?
Well, pardons were given out by to many people, and they shouldn't have been given out. Like the Unselect Committee of Political Thugs was given a pardon because they destroyed all of the information from 2 years of hearings, and they should be arrested, but they were given pardons. Was he given a pardon, Mayorkas? Was he not?
I don't believe so.
Well, I'd take a look at that one, because what he did is it's beyond incompetence. Something had to be done. Now, with that being said, he took orders from other people, and he was really doing the orders, and you could say he was very loyal to them, because it must have been very hard for him to stand up and sit up and talk about what he allowed to happen to this country and be serious about it. So he was given orders. If he wasn't given a pardon, I could see looking at that. In fact, why don't you take a look at it, Kristen? He was impeached, but yeah, it was just a fake impeachment. It was a fake impeachment. Why don't you take a look at it? I think he was so bad. They were all so bad. Look, it was the worst president in the history of our country. We've had some bad ones, but he was the worst president. But somebody told Mayorkas to do that, and he followed orders, but that doesn't necessarily hold him harmless. So take a look at it. It's a very good question, actually. Thank you.
I mean, listen, I wouldn't want to trade places with any Democrat that was a part of the Biden administration in any way, shape, or form right now. The hunters have become the hunted. I have followed Trump. I have studied Trump for a long time. Trump is making it seem like it's this, we'll think about it, maybe, looking over. I think maybe Pam Bondi was there. Certainly Kristi Noem. Hey, we should look into that. He is deliberately there trying to make it sound nonchalant. They are working on this, folks. Make no mistake about it. He's just making it. He is pretending for this to be sort of a off-the-cuff response. So this is, it's not going to be good moving forward. All right, let's take a quick break here. Obviously, bottom of the hour. Be right back, folks. Don't go anywhere. More of the What's Right show after these messages. Rarely wrong, always right. Sam Mirejovsky here, News Talk 840 KXNT. Welcome to the What's Right show. Folks, I hate to say this, but the headline here today, this morning, New York Post, Diddy gets off, was all too predictable. Yeah, by the way, this is another black eye for the Biden Department of Justice. What a giant flop. Can we be honest about this? Now, I'm going to play for you. I did a number of TV hits on this. In fact, let's see, when was this? I spoke to, I think about a month ago, I spoke to Steve Gruber on Real America's Voice. And it was on the 30th, excuse me. It was on the 30th of May, just over a month ago. And Steve Gruber, it's interesting because I remember I was talking. Well, anyway, here, let me play for you. This was me on Real America's Voice when I was asked to give my opinion on, the likelihood of Diddy getting convicted. There's no question that the level of depravity described in this testimony is off the charts. Okay, guaranteed. Now, the part of the testimony that I think was very bad for the prosecution is when on cross, Cassie, the girlfriend, the ex of Sean Combs, was asked to read the text messages back and forth. And I think where the defense is going to go on this is that, at least as to her specifically, this crazy behavior that obviously was violent at times and was disgusting, certainly, was part of their relationship, and that it was a kink that she was participating in. Now, they haven't charged him with battery, with domestic abuse, with assault, and that kind of surprises me, actually, because that to me would be provable, and there may have been a statute issue there in that jurisdiction. But regardless, this case is going to come down to, right? Do they believe the witnesses? Do they believe that the witnesses were coerced against their will to do these things? Because except for the racketeering charge, the others, have to do with, procuring and transporting prostitution and of course, the charge that relate to the human trafficking and kidnapping. And that would require the jury to absolutely buy into the fact that Cassie and others did this against their will. And they all showed up for it, and they were there, and they sent some very lovely text messages back and forth. See, there it is. I said that a month ago. I'm even talking about the prostitution charge. But by the way, here's the headline of what happened. The most serious charges he was acquitted of. The jury basically didn't buy the case that it was sex trafficking. He did apparently pay for sex, so he was convicted of some prostitution counts, which are relatively minor. And the big case against him just went poof. It's over. I don't know what kind of jail time he's going to get. Very little. He faced life in prison, is my point. So this is nothing. His team is celebrating this. Now, let me just repeat this again. I know I've gotten the emails from you folks. Trust me. I've read a lot about this, and Diddy is a disgusting person. And the tape, by the way, of him assaulting his girlfriend, hitting Cassie, is awful. It's actually difficult to watch. I'm appalled that he was never charged for assault and battery, for spousal abuse, maybe even attempted murder. But they didn't get around to charging him for that. Instead, they went for this case that was all about that these women basically were being sex trafficked because that was the politically correct thing to do. And the Biden Department of Justice under Merrick Garland did all sorts of the stupid stuff. I don't know. I don't want to come to Diddy's defense. I don't like Diddy. I'm not a Diddy fan. I'm not here to do that. But I will be honest with you. I have strong feelings about cases that are built on what could very well be regret. Some gal perhaps goes into a hotel room to meet a famous music guy, a producer maybe, Hollywood bigwig. She wants a role. She wants something. She wants, she's in it for a transaction. Something physical occurs. Perhaps it's sex or less. Who knows? A freak off. I don't know. He gets what he wants. She gets what she wants. And then some years later, she decides that she regrets it and can't live with herself for what she did. That's not a federal case. It's not a crime. It's really not a crime. And we're not, my concern with this is that I thought feminism, at least as I understood it growing up, was that women, of course, were just like men. We're all, as human beings, capable of making decisions as adults. And the minute you say, well, yeah, she made the decision, but she was coerced. Or, yeah, she made the decision, but there was an unequal power dynamic. He was rich and powerful. She was weak and young and poor. It's Marxism, right? These are the same people that on the basis of that logic go, oh yeah, Hamas is the good guy, and Israel, of course, the great Satan. I don't like any of it. I think if we've drawn a line in the sand, we've said it's 18. At 18, you're old enough to consent. You consent or you don't. If you don't consent, if you say no, and the guy, does, that's rape, of course. And I would give rapists the death penalty if it were up to me. I mean, I feel very strongly about this. Children, I'm done, right? That's unacceptable. But adults, I don't know, unequal power dynamic, all this stuff. So the whole case was presented to the jury. Diddy, rich guy, powerful guy, all this stuff. But the problem there is that these women, while they testified about how abused they were, they also had before and after, and immediately after in some cases, loving text messages exchanged where they sounded like they were into all the dirty stuff that was going on. So, you can never predict what a jury's going to do, but here I think the jury did pretty much what I expected. So that's my, quick lawyer's analysis of this. And anyway, there it is. So, I'm going to get to this. I'm going to get to this next, Robbie. I know. I gotta skip back here. I've had this clip here. Speaking of socialists, Trump yesterday got asked about the Zohran Mamdani guy running for mayor of the Socialist, and Trump, of course, is a New York guy. He loves New York, even though New York has has changed a lot, and he has moved his primary residence down to Florida. But Trump got asked about Mamdani, and this is what he said.
Mr. President, your beloved New York City. Your beloved New York City may well be led by a communist soon, Zohran Mamdani, who in his nomination speech said he will defy ICE and will not allow ICE to arrest criminal aliens in New York City. Your message to communist Zorhan Mandami.
Well, then we'll have to arrest him. Look, we don't need a communist in this country, but if we have one, I'm going to be watching over him very carefully on behalf of the nation. We send him money. We send him all the things that he needs to run a government. And by the way, they get about 3 times what you get, Ron. If you look at the per capita, Florida gets 1/3 of what New York gets in terms of the numbers. Why don't you give us those numbers?
Yeah, well,
because that's what we should send him.
Yeah, well, like sometimes people say Florida gets more because they count Social Security recipients, but that's not money to the state. Those are seniors that live here. If they moved to North Carolina, you could count it there. So it has no interaction with the state government. They get more in the city and state governments than we get.
Right, substantially. We're going to be watching that very carefully, and a lot of people are saying he's here illegally. He's, we're going to look at everything. But
well, I'm going to tell you this. One thing people are talking about is that he lied on Mamdani, that he lied on his naturalization application when he became a U.S. citizen. I believe it was in 2016. And the left is already freaking out about this. So you can't do that. There's no takesies, backsies. You can't withdraw. He's a citizen. He has that benefit. You can't remove it. And the answer is that's complete bunk and nonsense. You can denaturalize a naturalized U.S. citizen under certain conditions. And look, I mean, if he did in fact lie on his application, it's spelled out there on the app, and when you get your citizenship, that you can suffer that punishment, that your citizenship can be taken away from you when if it's proven that you've misstated some material facts. Well, I mean, material facts is it's the same case as there's against some of these pro-Hamas people, that they're affiliated with basically terror groups and have funded through their advocacy for Palestine terror. And that could be very easy to prove if it's there. So just something to watch. Expect fireworks is my point. Trump is going to insert himself into the situation in New York. And by the way, I think will help politically both Trump and Mamdani, for what it's worth. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840, KXNT. Hi, welcome back. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840, KXNT. The What's Right show is on. I mentioned briefly yesterday that there was an app designed by leftists to report ICE movements. I think the app is called Block ICE or something like that. Well, you write in it, you said, okay, I've seen ICE on the move in a particular neighborhood, and then it alerts people that perhaps there's going to be an enforcement action. And I mentioned yesterday that I think it's legal. And, then I saw that actually Kristi Noem, Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security, said that I'd referred the creators of the app over to Pam Bondi, the Attorney General, for prosecution. And I'm, it's at odds with what I said yesterday. This is why I want to come back to it. There have been court cases involving people getting arrested for flashing their high beams to warn motorists of a speed trap. If you've ever driven long distances, maybe you've done this. You see a cop on the side of the road with the radar gun and you're going the opposite direction. You flash little high beams to warn drivers to slow down. And there have been cases, one in particular, where the guy was actually arrested, and it went all the way through the courts, and it was determined to be permissible what he did. He was warning people of law enforcement, hey, there's some cops over there. I don't know. I think this app does the same thing. Now, you can't impede an investigation. You can't get in front of an illegal immigrant that's going to get detained and throw yourself in front of him and try to prevent and block officers from detaining that person. I think it's even problematic to threaten, obviously, law enforcement by publishing their, home addresses and phone numbers and that kind of thing, their names. I think that's legally problematic. I just don't think that this app is going to be legally problematic. I told you yesterday what they ought to do. If you're upset about the app, go on it, download the app, and then report ICE agents where they're not. Flood the app with bad information. There's no law against that. Also, right, the other side of the double-edged sword that is the First Amendment. So I think that's of note. And speaking of the First Amendment, people having a fit now that Trump has settled with Paramount the case, controversy of the 60 Minutes, the edited interview with Kamala Harris. Paramount, the parent company of CBS, has agreed to pay Trump $16 million. Now, well, the New York Times wrote a piece about this is almost there as if they were in mourning over it. News came out late Tuesday that Paramount has agreed to pay President Trump $16 million to settle his lawsuit over the editing of an interview on the CBS News program. They don't even get through to exactly what this was. And you have to get deep into the article to talk, even see the name Kamala Harris. The transcript, what is this, on page 7? The transcript of the interview showed that Ms. Harris gave a lengthy answer to a question about Benjamin Netanyahu. About 21 seconds of that answer aired in a preview of the interview. A different 7-second part of the answer aired the next day. Do you know nowhere here they say that this was a terrible word salad, awful answer, and it was so bad that CBS didn't want to air it because they were obviously in the bag helping Kamala Harris. Anyway, $16 million is nothing, right? It's a nuisance value, ultimately, when you consider that the future of the country hung in the balance. On any given day, when you look at all the stuff that Trump is achieving, and we're going to talk about it too today, the immense progress made on restoring sanity to women's sports. Enormous. So when we take these wins on immigration, on childhood sex change transition surgeries right now, Stanford just announcing overnight that they would cease to perform these just awful, horrible, life-altering surgeries on minors. You take all these wins, right, and you realize, imagine a universe where Kamala Harris had won, and then ask yourself, is $16 million punishment for a multi-billion-dollar corporation who was, on one hand, masquerading as an independent news outlet, but on the other, acting essentially as a propaganda arm for the Democratic National Committee? Is that an adequate enough punishment? And I would say the answer is no. Now, Paramount, obviously, the Redstone family there is involved in some merger talks. They will need approval from the administration, so some are calling this a bribe. But it, for me, fundamentally, it starts with the fact that they did wrong. They did wrong. What they did with that interview with Kamala by taking an answer she gave somewhere completely different and presenting it as the answer in the edited interview to the original question, right, or to a certain question, is to me is wrong. So they didn't like her answer and put in a whole nother answer that she gave somewhere else. You remember all those videos of Biden, particularly, not so much in 2016, although it was going on then, but leading into 2024, 2020, and then on to 2024, where they had to do so many cuts to make him sound good. Remember, well, we've played it a million times. Remember the video of Biden saying, that telling Trump this is before the ill-fated June debate where Biden completely came undone and Trump just destroyed him. That it was that Biden said, I'm throwing down the gauntlet, Trump. You meet me anywhere. I hear you're free on Wednesdays. Right? So, and it was, the thing was done, and you could see the cuts in it, right? You could see the edits. It's not like here when I'm on the air and I'm talking and, I'm doing it live, I'm not reading anything except when I'm quoting a story, and then, of course, attributing it regardless. But Biden couldn't get out the whole throwdown video, and so this is what they had to do with both of them. Kamala was no better. She just didn't have dementia as an excuse. Well, it's a little bit of justice is all I am saying. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840, KXNT. The What's Right show is brought to you by Sam and Ash Injury Law. In a crash, call Sam and Ash 702-820-1234 because you deserve what's right. Now, when we come back from the break here, I want to talk about what happened at the University of Pennsylvania. This is unbelievably great news for fairness in women's sports. Sam Mirejovsky, be right back after this. Sam Mirejovsky here, Nevada's favorite recovering Californian behind the What's Right microphone. Sam@whatsrightshow.com is my email. You can email me during the program. Of course, anytime. I do check them personally, and I try as best as I can to respond to each and every one of you. Anyway, by the way, and also on Twitter, on X, @What'sRightSam. Many of you there interact with me, and I love to see it. So here in the Czech Republic, I'm still in the first week of my trip, taking care of some stuff here, as well as getting my daughter wrapped up from her year abroad. So that's been successful. By the way, her Czech, Robbie's good. Went out to dinner last night, and she understood things in the conversation, was laughing at some jokes, even things that I thought were a little bit more obscure. So I guess she learned something here. What do you know? All right. Hey, by the way, great news. Did you see this? The Waffle House news. What do you mean you didn't see this? Waffle House is doing away with its egg surcharge. Well, I mean, I'm just saying this is great news. Like, what was it, $2 for eggs? Anyway, they're doing away with it because, of course, the Trump economy is working. The eggs thing was always ridiculous. We knew this. The eggs thing was a joke, but Biden called all the chickens, and I'm convinced, by the way, that it was designed deliberately to get people really upset when Trump came to office. Anyway, so that's one thing. But when you look at the Trump agenda, and this is, this goes with, of course, what's going on here with the University of Pennsylvania. And if you haven't heard, the University of Pennsylvania was forced to apologize to each and every female athlete individually who was harmed, basically, who was prejudiced by their policy to allow trans women, read men, to compete in women's events. And University of Pennsylvania, by the way, was ordered to also restore to any female athletes all individual recognition, titles, records, etc., that were misappropriated by male athletes, all right, who are competing in those female categories. Now, I mean, this is huge, and it's something Trump campaigned on. And even I was skeptical, to be perfectly honest, if Trump was going to be able to be successful in getting this turned around. Remember, what was basically the thrust of Trump's campaign? He went after, obviously, immigration, big topic for him, but he also went after crushing woke ideology. He went after indoctrination in our schools. He went after the issue that we've stopped under Democrat rule to defend Western civilization. In fact, much of education in this country, both in pre-college and certainly in college courses, meant to denigrate Western civilization and many of the great things that are the United States of America. They wanted so Trump campaigned on this on the social agenda, and at the forefront of that was this ridiculous trans ideology that made it for a period of time normal and accepted for men to beat girls in sport and to do it under the guise of political correctness and being, well, I guess, trans friendly. So here's, by the way, this is being warmly received. There are a lot of libs out there, even people that despise Trump, that are outspoken advocates for this cause. I think of Martina Navratilova as being a top one. She is an absolute Trump critic. She's a famous lesbian tennis star, but she competed professionally and, at a certain level in tennis. And tennis players in particular recognize that, you could be a top performing female tennis athlete. You're not going to be in the top 50 male players if you were to go head to head with men. And so, this is an issue that's been enormous and enormously big for Trump. And so he's pursuing it. And UPenn is forced to back down on this, and it's absolutely fantastic. And the best part is, right, the Title IX, which is where they hid all of this, where they put it all. They made it as we're following Title IX. We don't want to discriminate against female athletes, calling, of course, the men women. So now UPenn is going to adopt biology-based definitions for the word male and for the word female. Seems pretty common sense. And thereby, now, of course, Title IX will have the effect that I think the left originally wanted, to protect women and women's sports. Title IX will now be used to squash the trans ideology, radical trans ideology that the Democrats have pushed forward. Remember Title IX? What was the whole purpose behind it? Title IX existed so that women's sports would be, co-equally funded with men's. Okay, so Democrats were thinking that, everybody showed up to watch, men's, football and men's basketball and whatnot, and so that the female teams would not be adequately protected. There's some other parts and components of it, but remember, principally, it started as a defense, literally, of biological women and their sport in college. And it ultimately, under Biden, got twisted and turned around because they monkeyed with the definition of what is a man, what is a woman, and what was able to be used in order to get men to compete against women, in complete contravention of the original purpose of the law. I talk about this a lot. I think because I'm an attorney, I understand that words mean certain things. And they mean things in the law. And if you are a revolutionary and you don't want to bother with the messy legislative process, going to Congress, for example, and pass a new law or repeal a law that you don't like, instead of doing that, you can just redefine what the words in the law mean, and it changes the law completely. Sometimes, have you read a contract ever, like a complicated contract? One of the first things that the contract will do is it'll define certain terms, so there's no ambiguity about what the terms are. The Democrats deliberately here wanted to create ambiguity, and Trump understood it. And this is why the entire movement to define what a man is something that they never want to answer. What a woman is, they don't want to answer it. They want to keep it squishy. And they don't want to define much of anything. The left doesn't like to do this. They don't want to define, what a terrorist is. Heavens forbid, they can't even define what a Nazi is. They use the words a lot, but they don't have any real meaning. As long as the meaning can be moved, can be squished, can be changed, then, of course, everything in society can be moved around at their whim. This is how these things work. So, great news. And then, of course, there is the news about Stanford. Stanford Medical Center has backed away now, is refusing to do child, they call it gender affirming care. Essentially, it's sterilization of kids. Absolutely horrendous. So all of this stuff is happening. It's a one win after another. Now it takes me to an important question. I think about this a lot. Imagine for a minute that you're the left. Imagine that you're not just a dolt leftist voter that sort of regurgitates the catechisms of the Democratic Party, but you're one of the movers and shakers. You understand what Biden did. And you wanted the country flooded, for example, with millions of illegals, so that you could secure a greater degree of political power through apportionment of blue districts, through the money that flowed through USAID, which, by the way, today was closed officially. Marco Rubio, you saw this? Marco Rubio announced USAID is closed permanently. Again, that was a source for Democrats for funding. So my question is, imagine you're one of these Democrats, and you understood how this all worked. You understood you had money coming in, you had political power. You thought you were about to put Trump in prison, literally have Trump in jail for the rest of his life. And you and I, we turned it around. We went to the polls. We showed up. We got there. We voted. And in not a long period of time, we are today 163 days in to this presidency. 163 days. And all of this has happened in a mere 163 days. It's unbelievable. Just over 6 months. Wild. Just under. So there it is. Imagine you're a leftist. And I want to address this because you almost have to wonder what they're going to be up to next. How do you come back from this? What are they thinking? Who are they going to run? What does this look like? All right, I'll get to all of it when we come back. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840 KXNT. The What's Right show is brought to you by Sam & Ash Injury Law, because you deserve what's right.
The Sam & Ash team, they wanted me to have the best care. They had my interests at heart. I have an enormous amount of gratitude. I cannot say enough thank you.
I think we're gearing up for full-scale depression on the left, Robbie. That's my opinion. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840 KXNT. Welcome back to the What's Right show. So, if you're the left and you have thought you had it made in the shade, you thought, listen, we can't let Trump ever happen again. They were convinced 2 years ago that Trump would end up in federal prison for the remainder of his life. They put belt on suspenders on more belts and suspenders, filed all these cases against him, coordinated with Fani Willis down in Georgia. Everything blew up in their faces. And following 4 years of basically balls to the walls leftism, open borders globalism. It all blew up, and Trump became president a second time. Now, it wasn't like Trump 1.0. This was an educated Trump. He figured out who was loyal to him. He figured out what his agenda was, and he got a firsthand education into the nastiness of the deep state. He understood all of this stuff in 16, but he didn't get it viscerally the way that he gets it now. The left is screwed. There's no other way around it. And I think some of them are thinking occasionally, well, but you know what? This is so unpopular. Trump is being a Nazi. They've convinced themselves of all this stuff that it's going to backfire. The problem is it just hasn't. Yesterday, CNN Harry Enton went in and talked about Trump's popularity. Trump's polling is through the roof. Even CNN has to admit this. And you can just see the long faces in the back of the room. You can feel it, right? You can't see it, but you can feel everybody in the room getting the vapors over this.
Yeah, okay, so we're going to look at the strongly approved numbers. So this isn't just Republicans who like Donald Trump. This is Republicans who love Donald Trump, and he's up like a rocket. Look at this. In July 2017, the strongly approved was 53%. That's pretty good. But look at where he is now. 63% of Republicans strongly approve of the job that Donald Trump is doing about 5 months into his presidency. Republicans love Donald Trump the way that Americans love Disney World. The bottom line is 63%. That is a huge, huge base. And of course, it's just part of a Republican base in which about 90% of them overall approve of him, including the somewhat approves as well.
I mean, every politician would like this number here, especially to see it go up. How about compared to other presidents who were Republicans?
Yeah, it's history making. It's history making. What are we talking about here? So why don't we look back? We have all the presidents, Republican presidents, going back over the last 35, 36, 37 years. What are we talking about? GOP, who strongly approved 5 months in. Look at this. George H.W. Bush, Bush 41, 46%. Bush 43, 59. You see Trump, the first term, 53. But look at this. 63%. He beats all the other Republicans on the board here. And I was looking even back since Reagan. And get this, Donald Trump beats Ronald Reagan when it comes to the strongly approved 5 months. And of course, Reagan was coming off that high after that assassination attempt. So the bottom line is Donald Trump is making history with the Republican base. He is more beloved by this Republican base than any Republican base loved any GOP president 5 months in. It is history making.
So what happens now? Trump very popular, obviously. This is with Republicans, but that's important. He's got his base. I thought here, Robbie, with the big, beautiful bill and Elon Musk, that Republicans were going to abandon Trump. I thought that with Iran, with getting involved in Israel, that the base was going to turn their backs on Donaldus Maximus. None of that. Clearly, none of that has happened. Again, I'm convinced that Trump ran on certain key things, right? It was culture wars. It was the economy. It was immigration. I mean, he didn't run necessarily on the national debt. He said he was going to look into it, right? And he had Elon Musk, but I'm just pointing this out. Trump is immensely popular. So what does this do going into the midterms? Well, I've heard a lot of people say that when Trump picks a candidate, and he has had some flops, for example, Dr. Oz, Pennsylvania, had a Trump endorsement, didn't quite get him across the finish line. But remember, that was earlier. That was some years back now. How does it look now? Well, Harry Enton gets into what Trump's endorsement means for candidates and how frequently they win on the Republican side.
The question is, how effective is Trump's endorsement? We know it can hurt, but how effective is it?
Yeah, okay. So, the bottom line is, if you're a Republican lawmaker, you see this 63%, you say, my goodness gracious, you do not want to go against Donald Trump because the Republican base is with Donald Trump. And it's not just the polling. We actually have the data to show that the Republican base is with Donald Trump. The times Trump endorsees won the GOP primary for governor and congressional races. Look at this. 2024, 96%. 2022, 95%. 2020, 98%. The bottom line is this. 95% plus of the time, the Trump-endorsed candidate wins in GOP primaries. And even in the cases where Donald Trump endorses a challenger to an incumbent, the majority of the time, that challenger wins. So Donald Trump is a winner in Republican primaries. You go against Donald Trump, to quote the movie Good Burger, you go in the grinder. Donald Trump is the key nugget. His endorsement is the key nugget in a GOP primary because he's historically, strongly popular with the GOP
And
base.
now there's
I have never in my lifetime, and I think, obviously I was a child during Ronald Reagan's presidency, but I certainly not in my adult life have I seen a Republican president have more power over the Republican Party than Trump. It's a warning shot for Thomas Massie, I can tell you that. So it's, this is just enormous stuff, right? And what it means, the reason I said, listen, I look at the left and I think, what are they going to do? Trump is this popular. The only Democrat candidates that seem to be getting any traction are, socialists who are, maybe can win in New York, but are, never going to win on a national level in the U.S. The only thing that really matters is Trump's agenda popular, and do the individual in the midterms, congressional and Senate candidates have Trump's endorsement? And to the extent that they do, I think things are maybe looking a little bit better than we think. But we still need to go out and do what we did back in November of 2024. And that is, we have to go out and vote. Extremely important. Bottom of the hour, be right back in just a few minutes. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840, KXNT. Greetings and welcome to the What's Right show, brought to you by Sam and Ash Injury Law. In a crash, call Sam and Ash 702-820-1234 because you deserve what's right. Sam Mirejovsky here behind the What's Right microphone at What's Right Sam on X, formerly known as Twitter. And of course, email me, please. Questions, comments, concerns, sam@whatsrightshow.com. So Trump did an interview on Sunday. I want to come back to this. I meant to talk about it yesterday. He did an interview with Maria Bartiromo, and it was about the U.S.-China relations. Trump has been, together with Scott Bessent, has been working feverishly on getting a trade deal closed with China. And he's trying to get this. Got to get this across the finish line, right? So Trump is obviously very hesitant to say anything that would enrage or disrupt the negotiation. And he said something that I thought, I took a little bit of issue with, and I got to play it here for you with my commentary because it's just, see if you agree with what I'm thinking here.
They are paying substantial tariffs.
Well, I noticed that because it seems like you go so far with China, but you don't sort of use the leverage that you can use. I mean, look.
If I ever had to use it, I'd use it. But when there's no reason to use it, that's good too.
Well, we did just arrest 3 or 4 Chinese nationals who tried to bring a pathogen into the country that gets people sick and destroys food supply. We've got hacking.
You don't know where that came from, though. I mean, did that come from the country, or is that 3 wackos that happened to carry something? You just don't.
Well, there was one that he signed that he would be, one of them signed a paper saying that he would value Mao Zedong's value system. So there was that. And then they hack into our telecom system. They've been stealing intellectual property. They fentanyl, COVID. I mean, all of this stuff. So how do you negotiate with obviously a bad actor and trust them on economics?
You don't think we do that to them? We do.
So
we do a lot of things.
That's the way the world works?
That's the way the world works. It's a nasty world.
And then you just do a trade deal?
We do. Well, we made a lot of money with this trade deal. I do a trade deal if it works. We made a lot of money with the trade deal.
I'm going to tell you my response. I think the part of this that gets me is Maria Bartiromo confronts Trump about something that, of course, we know to be true, that China has done a lot of very awful things to us. They spy on us. They absolutely steal our intellectual property. They have spies who break into and take our our confidential, top secret, military documents. The whole 9 yards. COVID, certainly an argument can be made that China did that either deliberately or through grossly reckless actions. Fentanyl, again, something created and made in China and deliberately distributed in the U.S. Even TikTok, right? So she's brings us all up to Trump, and Trump says basically, we do all that stuff to China back. I hope he's right. I hope he's right. I hope that that's true. I just don't think it is. Certainly, under the last administration, we had a CIA more interested in, thwarting Trump than they were necessarily with protecting us from the Chinese. I mean, we let a Chinese spy balloon fly overhead, for Pete's sake. We had Biden compromised, members of his family deeply compromised by high-level Chinese government officials. I think we roll out the welcome mat to China. So, I mean, I guess if Trump has something up his sleeve and he feels confidently that we are doing terrible things to China back, I mean, I guess all's fair in, love and war, but I don't know. I think this is an example of Trump really not wanting to get into it and wanting to let the negotiation carry forward without any negative comments coming from him. That's ultimately what this is. So it was an interesting moment that was brought up. Now, the deal ultimately is getting done, and we'll see what happens. Kilmeade yesterday on Fox News interviewed Scott Bessent. And Bessent right now is being talked about. He's doing, I think, great work as Treasury Secretary, but he might be put in place of Jerome Powell in the Fed. I mean, they're talking about this. Anyway, Brian Kilmeade asked him about the tussle with Elon Musk. Because Musk, apparently, according to some sources, got up in Scott Bessent's face, may have even punched him or body checked him in the process of fighting over the big, beautiful bill and Doge. Well, this is how the answer went. Very, very short.
What's your reaction? You guys famously tangled in the White House.
I admire Elon's leadership on rockets. I will take care of the finances.
There it is. You, by the way, tell he's tense when he's giving that answer. Well, I mean, Elon's reignited the talk of the American Party about the new third party. He's talking about this openly. It is literally, folks, I love Elon Musk, and I'm a huge fan. It is the stupidest thing. I mean, even if your purported objective is to achieve what you intend, right? If Elon Musk absolutely wants to compel both Democrats and Republicans, essentially our government, to cut waste and ultimately right-size the budget and begin paying off our debt, if that's the objective, why in the name of all that's good in the world would you start a third party that is going to cannibalize votes from Republicans when we're already hanging in there by a thread? You're going to say, but Sam, the GOP isn't delivering on balancing a budget. They're some of the biggest spenders in government. And I'll give it to you. I'll say, you know what? You're right. Republicans also spend money like drunken whores. They just do a little bit less of it than Democrats. I will tell you that because look at the last 4 years. I mean, the Biden budget the biggest deficit-busting budget in peacetime ever. A disaster. $6 trillion added deficit. Anyway, I'm just letting you know. So, but even if I give it to you, I say, okay, Republicans are big spenders. This country comes apart if Democrats are able to secure the presidency, the Senate, and Congress. That open border will get opened again. 25,000 illegal immigrants back in the country, given a fast track to citizenship, done, can't be deported. Well, very difficult to denaturalize them. Over. It's all done. I mean, military spending, foreign policy, Iran with the nuclear weapon. I mean, what are we talking about here? If we it doesn't matter what our national debt is if we don't have borders, if we don't have national sovereignty, if we don't have a country. There are priorities. I'm thinking about this bill. There's lots in it that I don't like. And by the way, Chris Murphy, a Connecticut senator, he did a little post on social media lamenting how terrible this bill is. I don't know. This almost ends up being a reverse endorsement. Have a listen.
I am shaking with fury over what just happened. That's the most monstrous piece of legislation I've ever voted on in my time in Congress. What do those Republican senators go back and tell their constituents that they did? In the final speech, the only thing they mentioned was the money for the border. But what more can they do? They've already militarized the border. They've already created an immigration police state. They didn't mention anything about the fact this bill kicks 17 million people off of their health care. There are going to be thousands of people who die in this country because they lose their access to health care. There'll be tens of thousands of other lives that are needlessly destroyed. This is the biggest cut in child nutrition in the history of the country, I think. There are going to be moms and dads who literally watch their children go hungry. And why? Because they wanted to pad the pockets of Donald Trump's Mar-a-Lago friends. That's the only reason that they are throwing people off of health care, that they are rendering little children hungry so that some billionaire can get an extra $200,000 tax cut. It's just repulsive what they did. Now, it hasn't passed the House. There is a small but not insignificant chance that we can stop this bill before it gets to the president's desk. So let's get to work. Let's keep fighting. Let's not give up. Even if it does pass the House, then we have to tell the world what they did. We have to make sure that every single senator, every single congressman who voted for this from a swing state or a swing district never sets foot in this building again. This is a moral abomination, what they just did. And for what? For what? Just to make the lives of the rich and famous a little bit easier? So we'll do our work. I'm not giving up. I'm going to do everything I can to stop this bill from passing the House of Representatives. And it has real issues as it heads to the House of Representatives. But if it does become law, we're going to make sure these people pay politically for what they did.
Wow. So brave. But I'm listening to this. This guy's a nut, right? He doesn't like the bill. Maybe there's something good in it. But by the way, the Democrats are hella mad that the Republicans have come along and by the way, in the latest version of the bill now, apparently the Medicare to illegals is back. The cuts to that is back in. That's what he's screaming about. They are stopping payments, reimbursements for care given to illegal immigrants. And so there are people that are not going to have, he's right, there's people that are not going to have free medical care. Those people are here in the country illegally. I mean, again, this is what we voted for. It has nothing to do with making billionaires' lives easier. In fact, I'd make a strong argument for the fact that The entire blind eye turned to the immigration process benefits Democrats politically, but corporations economically, because companies have been reliant on an endless supply of cheap labor that is subsidized by the federal government. It's one of those dirty secrets that nobody ever seems to want to talk about. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840 KXNT. I'll be back in a moment, folks. Don't go anywhere. Hi, welcome back. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840 KXNT. So, I just played that clip of Senator Chris Murphy, Democrat, Connecticut, on the big, beautiful bill. He's not the only Democrat incensed about it. Elizabeth Warren yesterday went on social media to give her own diatribe, and this is also quite the masterpiece.
Leaving the Senate now, at the end of the vote, when the Republicans won, they cheered. They cheered over taking away health care from around 17 million people. They cheered over giving huge tax breaks to a handful of billionaires. They cheered over running up the national debt by another $3.5 trillion. This bill is bad. It's bad economically. It's bad morally. This bill is just wrong. But we stay in the fight. We stay in the fight. We stay in the fight. And we proved why we stay in the fight, because actually there are pieces of this bill that we got better. We got the tax on solar and wind knocked out, and that's going to help with clean energy. We got a few different pieces and made them better. So that's reason number one, is always the reminder. All of those calls matter. Reason number two is it's still not over. The bill has now got to go back over to the House. And there are a lot of Republicans who are feeling really squeamish about this bill at this point. So that means we got to stay in the fight. And reason number three is, they may do this now, but come November 2026, they're going to have to face the voters. They're going to have to face the people, the families of the people whose health care they took away. And they're going to have to explain exactly what they just did just now.
She looks distressed. I don't know. By the way, you see this report, Robbie, that Thomas Massie, who is, of course, one of the leading Republican critics, and I like Massie over the years. It certainly seems like a nice guy, and am sympathetic, obviously, to his principled take on deficit reduction, that he voted for the big Biden bill. I don't know. I mean, it's a matter of record. People are circulating that. My point is, some of the people that I am most skeptical of, like Chris Murphy, like Elizabeth Warren, are in tears over this bill. God, there's got to be some good stuff in it. $45 billion for border security, for the Border Patrol and ICE. I mean, we could get a lot of deporting done. And the fact that these Democrats who had thought they had it done, they had it locked in, they brought in 25, 30 million people and said, oh, no, there's no problem. And it's fine. Everything's fine. And all of a sudden, Republicans are this close to funding ICE in a way that makes what we've seen right now to date child's play. And we've got the Supreme Court saying, go Trump. Deportations can proceed. Can't have universal injunctions. Not one judge can come along and just put a kibosh to the whole thing. I mean, you could see, I too, if I was Elizabeth Warren, would be likely in tears, but it has nothing to do with the reasons that she's saying. The great hope of the Democratic Party to permanently take over the U.S. was thwarted in the nick of time. And by the way, there's lots of good things for workers. For example, no tax on tips finally going in. Calls it, by the way, Raskin Congressman Raskin from Maryland refers to it as a symbolic consolation prize. Tell that to the thousands of hospitality workers here in Las Vegas who derive a significant portion of income from tips, and certainly this would be a huge win for them.
I was asking you about no taxes on tips, which is part of this bill for working people who work on a tipped wage. Do you support that?
You know, I haven't looked seriously at it because I haven't thought they were serious about it. You know, tips are income, and I would prefer just to have a much more progressive income tax, so people who are making a lot of money are paying more, much more like happened under very conservative presidents like Nixon or Eisenhower, than to give people the kind of symbolic consolation prize of saying we're not going to tax tips. I mean, tips are income. I suppose that it's difficult to record them and to keep track of them. So I'm not necessarily opposed to it, but I think that it's a major distraction from what's really gone on, which is that the GOP has destroyed the idea of progressive income taxation in America, which is the more money you make, the more you should pay, because you get to draw more resources from society.
Yeah, sorry, the GOP rejected communism again. Okay. So symbolic, yeah, symbolic. It was such a good idea that Trump had that, did we not forget that Kamala Harris stole it from Trump and started using it herself on the campaign trail? I'm just, folks, I'm telling you, massive levels of depression are happening as we speak, deep in the Democratic Party. And I don't know, I've never seen Elizabeth Warren basically in tears and you know, senators, you know, Democratic senators looking like they've just been maced in the face by the orange man. But that is pretty much how things are going right now. All right, listen, it's a lot going on, but of course we'll be back tomorrow to unpackage more of it here on the What's Right show. Sam Mirejovsky, Nevada's favorite recovering Californian, can be reached at sam@whatsrightshow.com, and of course on Twitter, X, @whatsrightsam. Find me there, click to follow. There's no subscription, just follow me. That's all you need to do. And of course, you can follow the show where we upload full episodes also on X. I forget to mention that enough. @whatsrightshow. Follow that account as well. All right, we'll see you tomorrow. Have a great day. Be safe out there. Don't let the wind carry you away. Talk again, same time, same place.